Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today to hear the Sightlines presentation, Data and Sustainability, How the Right Data Creates Success. I am working right now to get this block out of the side of my window here so that you don't have to see the side screen, but having a little bit of trouble. So, excuse me. I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Heather Finnegan. I'm an account manager with the Sightlines company, and my background is in conservation biology. A few years ago, I made the transition to the field of sustainability, and much like many of you on the phone call, it's a bit of a second career, especially because the field is so quickly evolving and expanding in the higher ed marketplace. A lot of us have come from diverse backgrounds, which is really exciting, especially when the group gets together and starts talking about the various projects that they're tackling on campus. But there's also some challenges along with this diversity in everyone's background as sustainability professionals. We're going to talk a little bit about those challenges and then dive into case studies about how you can use data to really make an impact on campus. We have one case study devoted to how you can use greenhouse gas inventory data to make the case for change towards carbon neutrality. A second case study where we're going to talk about just how to communicate STARS results to stakeholders. And finally, a case study looking at how we have worked with some institutions to create sustainability plans that are truly actionable. And then we'll open it up to questions and comments at the very end. Before we dive into the material, I want to give everyone an introduction to the process for this webinar. I have my colleague Eric Nolan on the line, and he'll be listening in throughout the presentation on the questions that your group poses throughout the case studies. So you'll see the box on the screen here. There's a place for you to enter in questions or to raise your hand if you have any questions that you'd like to address or any topics that you'd like to learn a little bit more about. At the end of each section, I'll go to Eric and ask what questions are new from the crowd, and we'll field them so that we can really get communication going between our team and yours. And then finally, at the end of the webinar, we'll share these presentation slides and a recording of the webinar to each of the attendees so that you can refer back to the material. So let's get started. I want to talk about the life of a sustainability professional. When I work with folks on campus, what I hear time and time again is that anyone stationed in a sustainability officer role on a campus is pulled 100,000 different ways. I work with a few dozen institutions on the East Coast and stationed in the Philadelphia area, and pretty much any time I'm talking to one of the pros on campus, they are running from meeting to meeting on various topics. So something we did leading up to this webinar was pull a list of job descriptions that were on the HE website and look at just what responsibilities fall under the umbrella of a sustainability professional in higher ed. So let's dive into this a little bit on the right-hand side. We have responsibility as pros to make recommendations to the campus, do assessments of current progress, facilitate programs and activities with stakeholders, develop new programs, achieve certain outcomes, especially at institutions that have made specific goals and criteria for what performance and sustainability looks like. It's your job to respond to stakeholders across campus, attend conferences, monitor performance, represent your group at meetings in all various departments and divisions, lead activities, strategize, consult, create activities that engage stakeholders, create new resources that can educate, and ensure that research and courses are developed that fit within the sustainability ethos of your institution. Develop programs, develop events. It goes on and on and on. And what I hear all the time is that in many regards, the work is very energizing. You're often working with the students who are super engaged on the topic, but you're also asked to do so many various responsibilities around campus that it's hard to keep track of it all, and it's hard to really implement programs that can make major change on campus because of all this various pull and responsibility. So we wanted to start off today by talking about those pressure points that you experience as sustainability professionals. I hear time and time again, there's not enough time, there's not enough folks on campus who are really bought into the idea of sustainability. They're not integrating it into their daily activities the way that you need it to happen across campus to really see success, and that there's competing priorities. So I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague Eric Nolan for just a moment, who has a poll ready to go out to the crowd so that we could talk a little bit about what your pressure points are in the audience today.
All right, thanks, Heather. All right, everyone. So the poll will be launching in 3, 2, 1. We'll be tracking the respondents along the way. So far, we're getting ton of engagement. Lack of buy-in appears to be the front runner at this point, followed closely by lack of staff. It's very interesting. They are now officially neck and neck, so we're getting a lot of really great information here. All right, so we'll just leave it open for another couple of seconds, so get your selections in. All right, so we'll close it now, and we'll share it with everyone so you can take a look at the results. All right, take it away, Heather.
All right, Eric, summarize for me. I can't see it on my screen.
Oh, okay. So actually, it's a neck-and-neck tie between lack of buy-in and lack of staff, both at 33%, and 19% in third place, or in second place, too many competing priorities, and in last place, not enough time at 14%.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. It's really great to get a perspective of what you face on an everyday basis on campus, because as a third-party group, our goal is to alleviate the pressure that institutions feel and our real specialty is in data analysis. So what we really strive for is finding a way to collect, process, and present data as efficiently as possible so that your staff isn't bogged down doing project management just to get your STARS report in or just to submit your greenhouse gas inventory to Second Nature. But rather, your team can really spend time focusing on engaging students and getting programs off the ground that have a measurable impact into the future. The last piece of what we really focus on is finding a way to use that data as a communication tool. It's all about putting that data to work, showing it to leadership so that they can see your sustainability progress, you can tout your successes, but also so they can see a gap analysis. Where is your institution falling behind, and how does it affect the overall operations of your campus? So the first case study I want to take you to is from a group on the East Coast. This is a historical institution that works with us in our sustainability benchmarking service. Every year we complete a greenhouse gas inventory for this group, and we also benchmark 60+ additional metrics. So I want to tell you a little bit about their story and where throughout the years that we've been working for them, the data was really able to create an atmosphere of change where they were getting resources and buy-in from senior leadership to respond to the problem. Excuse me. So many of our institutions, including the one I'm about to talk about, complain about the issues with self-reporting, especially on the greenhouse gas inventory front. So on the Second Nature website, they acknowledge that most of the data that goes into the reporting regime is unverified and it's very difficult to use it for unbiased normalization metrics or for benchmarking against other institutions. A few years ago, researchers at Carnegie Mellon University took a deep look at the ACU-PCC reports and found countless errors and problems. They surmised that the group was probably unaware that these issues existed in their reports and noted that the systems weren't really designed to pick up errors, and as a result, it's not really feasible to benchmark this data. So many moons ago, our members came to us and said, we really need help with our greenhouse gas inventory. Much like your folks are saying, there wasn't enough staff in the office to complete the work themselves, and they were having trouble getting the data in front of the decision makers who would really take the recommendations and provide funding and resources to create change on campus. So we came up with our greenhouse gas inventory solution and take it through a QVQ process where we collect, verify, and then present the findings to senior leadership for these greenhouse gas inventories. So here's the findings for this East Coast institution that I told you about. We've been working with them for many years and have their data going back to 2006 for scope 1, 2, and 3. So let's take a look on the left-hand side of their profile. Scope 1, which is their emissions from on-site stationary fuels primarily. Scope 2, which is their emissions from purchased electricity. And Scope 3, which include factors like commuting, waste, and wastewater. This institution, tracking over time, has seen some progress in their gross emissions. They're down just about 10% against the baseline year of 2006. But if you look on the right, they had made a decision in between the years 2011 and 2012 to really take a bite out of those gross emissions. So in the hatched marks, you see that they're purchasing offsets in the form of renewable energy credits to offset some of those emissions, primarily those associated with the Scope 2 purchased electricity. So you see a big improvement in their profile from 2011 to 2012. Now you're looking at a 50% decrease in net emissions against baseline. And there was a lot of celebration around this decision because the data that we had been providing to them for the previous several years had been the key factor in them communicating to senior leadership that they weren't really making the progress that they wanted to make. So they got the commitment to purchase RECs and earned some awards off of it that year, especially from the EPA and a few other groups about their climate leadership. But then, in the last several years, you see a stagnation again. In orange is their net emissions from 2012 to 2015, and again, no real improvement during that time. So we started talking to them about how to tackle the Scope 1 emissions during that time period. These are the emissions from their on-site fossil combustion, primarily. And we tied this to capital information because most of our members, like all of you, almost all of you on the call, have facilities departments that are already working with our Sightlines team. So we have space data, capital data, and operations data from a facilities perspective for many of your institutions and can tie that back to the sustainability goal. This institution, we set up a target of how much would be the ideal amount of capital dollars that they were investing into their envelope and mechanical, which are your boilers, HVAC units, windows, etc., as opposed to how much they should be investing in their space and program on the right. This is a target for how much they should be investing in carpet, paint, chairs, things that beautify a campus and make it more aesthetically pleasing. So this institution used this business data, if you will, to say that they were falling behind on their target for envelope and mechanical. So they weren't investing into their systems to the extent that they should, just investing 50% of what would be the ideal amount, or $9.1 million a year. On the space and program side, they were investing more than 100% to target. So they were spending a lot to beautify their campus But the systems that are so integral to finding energy efficiency were not getting the attention that they needed given their age and condition. Excuse me. And it shows. Here's some pictures of their campus. On the right-hand side, you can tell that the campus walks beautifully. They have nice space, beautiful furniture, updated carpets, recent paint jobs. And this has a real positive impact on their enrollment because when folks walk campus, they see all these great conditions. But all of that was coming at the expense of keeping up with their building systems, which we show on the left. During mechanical room inspections, we found that this institution against peers was scoring far lower on the condition of their mechanical spaces because they had not been investing the necessary dollars to maintain their HVAC equipment. So this is the beginning of their business case to the leadership, the CFO, the folks that control the budgets and the capital expenditures on campus to say, we know campus looks great, but we have an emergency problem on our hands because we're not taking care of our energy systems. And the response 2 or 3 years ago was to outsource some of their HVAC responsibilities to a third-party vendor. But this wasn't highly successful because their goal was twofold. They wanted to save money, they wanted to improve energy efficiency, and they wanted to make a real impact on their Scope 1 emissions as a result. But we already saw that over the last 3 years, their Scope 1 emissions have really stagnated, no improvement there. So what we did was work with them to highlight the issue with this third-party contract that they had brought on, because they were telling their leadership, it's not working out for us. They had this gut instinct that it wasn't an effective financial agreement and it wasn't effective in achieving those sustainability goals. So we put the data behind it. Because we had their sustainability and their facilities data, this is possible. Let's look at the difference in their expenditures from 2006 to 2015. You see in the early years of working with them that just 21% of their dollars their expense dollars were being spent on HVAC and HVAC work. Now in 2015, since they took on that third-party contract, it's 51% of their expense mix. So they're spending an extra $2 million a year on this HVAC contract. They had real goals set out associated with it, primarily cost savings and energy efficiency improvements, because these contractors were responsible for doing preventative maintenance work, repairing and maintenance of their power plant, and their in-building systems. But with this data, they could show not only is the contract costing us a lot of money, we already know that our sustainability metrics have stagnated for 3 years straight. Now let's also take a look at how it's affecting our operations. These are their utility dollars per gross square foot, so how much they're spending for their water, sewer, and electric and natural gas during this time period from 2006 to 2015. And you'll see this massive spike in utility expenditures. This contract was supposed to provide them with an energy manager that improved their energy performance and saved them operational dollars. Now the data that we've shown them collectively shows that it's missing the target on all fronts. And as a direct result of these conversations that we had with their CFO, they're now renegotiating the contract and have taken a serious look at making sure that they build language into it that requires the group to show cost savings, to reduce the write-up that they're charging on equipment replacement, and to complete a certain amount of preventative maintenance work that extends the life cycle and improves energy efficiency over time. So it's one of these cases that we're really stricken by the power at which you could use data to drive a very specific decision on campus. It is one thing to say we're not meeting our sustainability goals, but it's quite another to add the business case on top of it to say this is costing us an arm and a leg and we're still not meeting our goals. So before I go on from this case study, I'd like to open it up to Eric, who has been looking at your responses and comments and questions over time to see if there's anything that we should talk about as a group before we move on.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. We do have 2 questions here. One question from Sean. Can you explain what second nature is?
Sure. Okay, so second nature is the group that originated the ACU-PCC, or the American College and University President's Climate Commitment. I've recently changed how I've talked about this group because for many years we were calling them ACU-PCC, but as of last October, they have rebranded some of their commitments, namely the carbon commitment, which is one that many institutions have signed to set a date by which they want to achieve carbon neutrality. And that's now called just the carbon commitment by Second Nature. And the second is a new commitment called the resilience commitment, where organizations will create KPIs around how they want to respond to the inevitable climate change that will happen as a result of human activity.
Okay, thanks, Heather. One more question, and I believe this it refers to the current slide, slide 13. Were they experiencing rate increases for purchased utilities that is inflating the dollar per GSF?
Yeah, it's actually twofold here. So their consumption had actually gone up from 06 to 15, despite the fact that they brought in this contractor to specifically control consumption. Their electric cost had also gone up during this time period with little improvement in efficiency. So it's a double whammy. Most institutions were seeing energy efficiency gains during that 06 to 15 time period of about 1% reduction in consumption per year. At this institution, they actually saw an increase in the consumption and an increase in the cost. And part of that contract was that they were supposed to have an energy manager who was supposed to be helping them negotiate contracts.
Okay, great. Thanks, Heather. That's all the questions we have so far.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Please keep the questions coming as we move through. I'd really like to hear your feedback and ideas about where your pressure points are on your campus so that we can talk more about that. I want to dive into a second case study, this under our sustainability reporting service. So for some institutions, we complete their entire STARS report and provide a senior level presentation about the outcomes of their STARS performance, as well as some strategic recommendations for how to improve their STARS rating going forward. The institution that I'm going to show data for is a really, really great place. That's actually one of my favorite campuses I've ever spent time on. It's located in the Rockies, and it is an institution dedicated to the Native American population in the West. Their primary mission as an educational organization is to create change makers, which just so well aligns with our vision as sustainability professionals. They have been operating an environmental center for now 25 years, and their mission statement is to take college freshmen, work with them to develop leadership skills so that by the time they graduate from their institution, they can go back to their native community and be agents of change that can really have a significant impact even as 21-year-olds, because they have learned all the soft skills necessary to commit to a project, see it through, and identify areas that are a real need of improvement in their community. So they brought us in to help with their operations piece of their STARS report card, because their focus on campus is so deeply ingrained in this student engagement piece that their office had that expertise, but not necessarily the expertise on the operations side. So we came in to augment some of their existing skill set and help them get that STARS report ready in a timely manner. Excuse me. So what we've heard from our members and what we've received information about from the ASHE membership survey last year about the STARS report is that folks like it. They like how all-inclusive it is to complete the STARS report, because it talks about a campus's operational performance, academic performance, and engagement performance as it pertains to sustainability. But there are some pressure points. So they asked in the membership survey, what are the greatest barriers to your institution participating in STARS? And the #1 answer they got was that we don't have the time, resources, and staff to complete it. just like you folks said at the very beginning poll, that 33% who said, I don't have enough people and we don't have enough time. That's what we hear universally on college campuses. Not necessarily that there's any issue with the STAR system, but just that it takes so very much time to complete. The technical manual alone is over 300 pages. So for an institution that only goes through the process every 3 years, it's very hard to maintain any sort of expertise in completing the assignment. The next question was about how can we improve the process of STARS, again from the HE membership survey. And the top theme that came out of this was STARS is just so complex. So what we've gone in is try to reduce that complexity for our members, for the institutions we work with every day, and to provide an efficient means by which they can complete the STARS report so that they get all that really valuable information, but without bogging down that really small staff profile that they have on campus. So I want to show you the organizing feature of the deliverable that we gave to this institution. We were completing the operations section of their STARS report, and we gave them a breakdown of how many points they earned per category and compared that against institutions that were operating on a similar scale, so institutions with the same enrollment, roughly. And we gave them a snapshot to say, not just your STARS silver, but to give them a real breakdown of where they're performing well against peers and where they have room for improvement. So this group was really interested in talking about their energy story. You see, when I highlight that, that's one of the areas where they were outperforming the rest of the peers. And they wanted to know, where were we successful and how can we really build on that to keep moving forward from that perspective? Before I move on, I want to share an anecdote with you. This group is a very open and leisurely crowd, and what they weren't sure they liked about STARS was that it was a point system. They didn't really want to score themselves, they just wanted to find a path forward. That's how they came into the conversation with us. But after we showed them this perspective that the points can really be useful in finding out a quick way to communicate to leadership where you're ahead and where you might be falling a little bit behind, they really engaged with it. So even though they weren't all about being scored, they found that it gained traction with senior leadership. For weeks afterwards, we were getting responses and emails from this crew saying, you wouldn't believe who just reached out to me. They wanted to know why we were behind on dining and how they could invest to make improvements in that area. So it really captured the interest of all stakeholders that are involved in their decision-making on campus. So let's look at their energy profile. This institution had just come off a performance contract that was very successful. Between their baseline year, which was fiscal year 11, and the current performance year, which was fiscal year 15, they saw campus reduce in size just a little bit. They knocked down a little bit of space and saw just 1% less gross square feet than they had started with. But during that time, their energy consumption on an MMBTU basis went down 26%. Once you normalize that, they cut out a quarter of their consumption in just 4 years through that performance contract. They were getting ready to make a proposal to leadership to, excuse me, to go through a second round of performance contracting, and this information right here helped seal the deal. They said, we can show you that not only did it work for us, it really took care of that low-hanging fruit from a systems perspective on campus, but also it makes us a standout by the criteria outlined in STARS. STARS is a system that was really invented by yourselves and your peers. You all came together and said, what are the things we should be measuring in sustainability, and what is considered good performance? So here we show a chart on the right that gives a STARS performance threshold. And this is measuring BTUs, so amount of energy consumed per gross square foot per degree day. And STAR says if you're below 28 on this measure, your institution is performing very well. And this case study institution was consuming just short of 20 BTUs per GSF per degree day. So it was a real moment of success for them. They hadn't just improved against their own performance, but against this threshold of success that their peers had set out for them. And it became a great communication vehicle for them to say, we've done well, let's do it again, and let's get more and more and more of those low-hanging fruit from an energy perspective taken care of. The other interesting component that came out of this was highlighting what factors had a lesser impact on campus. So when we first started working with their group, everyone wanted to show us their solar panels. They were very proud of them. Their architects who had built and designed their buildings had built to LEED standards, and they had installed some solar panels on the roof. They had been using them for academic reasons. A lot of classrooms were collecting data from them, from the meters, and using it as part of their laboratory exercises. So they were really serving a purpose in that way. But what we were able to highlight was that what they considered this success, having this solar power on site, really was quite minimal in the extent of its impact, because just 0.2% of their energy consumption was generated from that on-roof solar top installations on their new construction buildings. So we talked a little bit about how to go forward from here, and I want to show you the impact of our discussion on campus. So start on the left-hand side here. This is this institution's performance. The color coding in the background shows the different scales of STAR's performance, where you could be STAR's bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. And that's how many points you would need to earn within operations to score in that category going forward. So this institution was just on the cusp between bronze and silver. And what we did was lay out a scenario for them of how to move from that cusp of silver categorization to having a really strong operations performance in the next iteration of their reporting. So the first recommendation that we made for them shows up as that blue diamond. We said, STARS is going to give you credit if you do campus-wide energy and water benchmarking. If you, on an annual basis, can determine how much of your water and energy is used on campus, benchmark that, and get a perspective of how is your performance against peers. And also, how is your performance across buildings on campus? That is an area where you can earn STARS points, but also gain really valuable insight that can help direct what projects should be happening on campus. It can help the facilities team know where their operations weak points are, and can help the facilities team decide where to invest their capital dollars. So we made that as our first suggestion, and then built out a series of suggestions that would incrementally get them closer to that STARS Gold status. I won't go through them all now just for sake of time, but in the end, those incremental improvements, all shown as blue diamonds, got them solidly into Operations Silver status. But this school wanted to go a step further. They said, what can we do to be best in class in operations? We want to be a standout, and we want to perform in a way that makes other institutions raise their own internal bar. So we did some research about best in class renewable energy and found that the very best in class in the STARS database were producing up to 50% of their total energy via off-site renewable projects, where they were in power purchase agreements with nearby renewable projects and were able to consume that energy and get credit for it through the contract. And if they were to go this route of getting up to 50% of their energy via renewables, they would get very close to that gold STARS target. They could take one step further and offset the remainder of their scope 2 with RECs, which would cost them just short of $3,500. I just got a call, I'm going to say 4 or 5 days ago, from this institution, and they said, you know, when you made this suggestion to us, we were excited by the idea. We wanted to talk about it with our leadership, but they acted much faster than we ever anticipated. So they are now in contract negotiations with a local provider who would produce power in their community and build a system that would accommodate this institution's request for renewables, as well as many of the other organizations and companies within their small city. So it became a community engagement project. They're looking for fellow buyers that can basically form a co-op to help spur the development of local renewables in their community. And they couldn't be more excited about it, especially because the conversation progressed so very quickly as they were all in a room talking about their goals and setting out a forecast for the future. But you'll see, excuse me, I'm going to go back one slide. You'll see that after all these suggestions, they're still just short of that gold status for their STARS ranking if they were to implement all those small incremental changes we talked about in the next 3 years. So to put their minds at ease that you could still be a top performer from an operations perspective, we started taking a look at the institutions that had earned the most points in the STARS system. So far, 1 institution has earned STARS Platinum, 93 have earned STARS Gold. And we took an analysis of those 94 institutions to see just where they were earning their points within the STARS system, and found that the majority of those institutions were really scoring well in academics, engagement, and administration, but that it was extraordinarily hard to earn a lot of points in operations, primarily because operations projects take a great deal of capital, time, and facilities buy-in to happen. So this spurred the conversation amongst their Sustainability Council about how they can really strengthen the ties between the sustainability folks on campus who have more of an engagement background and the operations facilities team, and how they can better collaborate to really make improvements and to be standouts in this regard, because they know just how hard it is to earn those points within the operations section. I'm going to skip ahead for the sake of time here, but before I do, I want to talk to Eric, my colleague, and ask if there was any questions during this section.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Heather. We have one question here from Robert. The question is, even with complete sets of data, do you see different levels of buy-in for organizations with sustainability personnel in facilities versus sustainability personnel not in facilities?
What a great question. You know what? There's always going to be a culture at any institution. And it's not necessarily about where the sustainability officer is housed within the organizational structure, but more about the culture and attitude on campus. And I will say that when I see folks housed within the facilities department, there is certainly more communication. They're seeing each other on a daily basis, they're bumping into each other, they're attending the same meetings. And that alone has an impact, but it's not everything. It's also about finding ways to communicate and keep the lines of communication open and show the data to the facilities folks in a way that makes sense to them. Because most of these folks have a lot of competing priorities. They're being told every day that they need to cut expenses, that they need to work with less personnel, that they need to fix 100,000 problems on campus when they really only have enough money to fix 30,000 of them. And you need to be, as a sustainability professional, one of those strong voices that's advocating that they can do all of that while still meeting sustainability goals. So if you're not housed in that department, which many of my colleagues on campus are not, I find that they're really most successful if they are finding a way to use their data to talk business with these folks, because the facilities team is much more likely looking at dollars and cents than they are goals on paper.
Okay, great. Thanks, Heather. We just had a couple of questions actually come in. The first one is from Teddy. Could STARS take the state factor into consideration regarding air and climate and renewable energy points?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Could STARS take the state factor into consideration regarding air and climate and renewable energy points?
You said state factor?
State.
Space factor. Oh,
no,
yes.
State as in States of America.
States of America. STARS, I gotcha. STARS does offer some possibilities for regionalization, especially on the waterfront. So they, excuse my Philly accent, waterfront. They take into account the climate zone that the institution is reporting from, and there is some control for the factor that there are localized water issues, and there is some control built into the greenhouse gas inventory component based on your local e-grid. But as a whole, the benchmarks or the targets that they set, the performance targets, are generalized. So there are some areas where one institution may be at a disadvantage against another because of their regional specificity.
Okay. We have one more question here from Sean. Where can I find information or stories that describe how HE members have used the STARS benchmarking process to drive improvements?
That's a great question. They come out with an annual report of some best-in-class institutions. I'm not sure it's as direct of a tie as you're looking for about how STARS led to change. Could certainly share some of those anecdotal stories with you offline, but I think now that more institutions are going through the reporting process for a second time, we will be able to start tracking the data about where are the key areas that most institutions are really showing improvement from their first report to the second report. But there's been so few that have done it multiple times that we don't have like a great data set yet.
Okay, thanks Heather. That was great, really good questions. It looks like that's all we have so far.
All right, thank you everyone for your engagement. I really appreciate it. I am going to tell you next about the case study for another institute, for the same institution actually, that is working with us to create a sustainability plan. So we are participating in stakeholder engagement on campus, and our goal at the end of this project is to create a publication quality sustainability plan for the institution. Because they already have committed to using STARS as their reporting vehicle, we're designing their sustainability plan around STARS so that the KPIs and the metrics that we're tracking for them are going to be naturally checked and become part of a regular feedback cycle so that they plan today, they go out and implement tomorrow, and then 2-3 years from now they can use STARS to see just how well they're doing against their plan. This distinction is important because so many institutions wrote sustainability plans or climate action plans and then shoved them in a drawer because they were so complex and there were so many projects outlined on it that they didn't have the time to go back and really put numbers behind their success and their performance. But if you're already using a reporting tool like STARS or like the carbon commitment, it really makes sense to design your sustainability plan around that tool so you have a natural feedback to see how you're doing against your goals. I'm going to go back to the HE membership survey once more because one of the reasons that we started providing this service to our members is because the institutions we work with were saying we have a lot of challenges in sustainability. We're really having a hard time meeting all of our goals because of lack of buy-in and all of these other issues that you mentioned in the poll at the very beginning. But in the survey that came out this past year, the #1 complaint was that their leaders in sustainability are having trouble integrating sustainability into the core functions of the organization. And the best way to set a goal for this or to set projections for the future is to bring all of those stakeholders, all of those different core functions together when you're writing your sustainability plan, so that at the very beginning you have buy-in from the folks that need to make action to accomplish those goals. So the stakeholder engagement process includes bringing in the folks that are making academic decisions, engagement, and so on. And I'm going to show you a snippet of the academic section that we're working on with this institution. Their mission is to ensure that students graduate with a basic understanding of sustainability concepts and challenges, regardless of area of study. And this is why this is really important for this institution, because their #1 goal is to create a change agents to work with these students so that they can go back to their local communities and really have an impact. They want this to be a blanket commitment. They want all areas of study to be having some focus on sustainability, whether from a social, economic, or environmental perspective. They use STARS to measure how they're doing now, And they found that 13% of their graduates are earning degrees from programs with sustainability learning outcomes. But they want to do better. They want it to get to 100% of their graduates being educated in sustainability at some point during their education. So we help them create both short-term and long-term strategies. The short-term are what they want to accomplish within the next 3 years before their next STARS reporting cycle. And the long-term strategies are areas where they're in the planning phase during those 3 years, and then they plan to implement after the next cycle. So short-term, they've made the Sustainability Council and the Office of Institutional Research responsible for creating a literacy assessment. They want to sample upon matriculation and again at graduation to measure sustainability learning outcomes. This is going to create their baseline to see their performance on this academic front. And then longer term, they're in the planning stage now for this, it will be the responsibility of the president and the academic deans to incorporate sustainability learning outcomes into the declared educational mission of the institution as a whole, so across departments and across divisions. Now, I mentioned at the beginning what makes this a unique framework is that they are using their plan to do multiple things, not just set goals. They're also using it, as you can see in the bottom right here, to educate folks about their performance in each criteria within STARS, and then to give responsibility for all of these strategies and goals going forward. They're going to measure how they do and then replan based on their performance going forward. So it was just a little snapshot. This is a work in progress with this institution, but something that was a really natural follow-up to our work with them on the STAR system, because we showed them how they did and their next step was, how can we do better? And we jumped right into the planning phase and are really excited to share the outcomes of that with them in the near future. So any questions on either sustainability planning or any of the other content that I covered? I'd really like to hear your insights and questions about your pressure points on campus.
No questions at this point, but we'll give it a few moments and we'll wait for some more to trickle in. All right, I don't see anything coming through, just a couple of thank yous, actually. So I think we can probably close out at this point.
Okay, well thank you everyone so much for attending. We will send you the presentation and a recording of the webinar, as well as my contact information, because we'd love to keep the dialogue going. Please reach out in any way we can help.